Hello everyone, and welcome back to another figure review. Today, we're taking a look at the S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball Z Mecha Frieza. This one wasn't on my most anticipated list, but after having this guy in hand, I could definitely say I've changed my mind. There are a few things I'm impressed with overall, but there's a few things I'm not super thrilled about. So, without further ado, let's get into the review and talk about Mecha Frieza. Starting with the packaging, we have Mecha Frieza in a pose similar to the scene in the anime where he's lecturing Trunks on he who acquires his skills quickly is he who's first to perish. Sure, it's a liberty taken by the original Funimation dub of Z, but I'm sure many of you watching this video here grew up on the Funimation dub and can remember that line. We get some manga style paneling that is complemented with a nice lavender color, similar to that of the general release of 4th form Frieza. The right side of the box continues that manga style paneling. The back side of the box gives us a look at what to expect with Mecha Frieza when posing him around. Here's a look at the left side of the box. A quick look at the top. And bottom to round off the packaging. For the paint detail on Mecha Frieza, there's a lot going on, and in a good way. I want to say this is probably the most paint I've seen on an S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball figure. From what I can tell, the portions of Frieza's body that are mechanical are done in metallic paint, with the portions that are done in black, blue, and brown being painted on as well. What's left of Frieza's body has a hint of blue shading to give those sculpted details just a little more depth. The purple is consistent with the first, second, and third forms of Frieza, but I kinda wish they went with the same pearlescent finish that they used on the 4th form Frieza. I really have no complaints when it comes to the figure's design and execution itself, and you can tell Tamashii Nation's really put in some effort on this one, as the head sculpts are highly detailed and even the hands are given the same level of detail like we saw with the Dr. Gero release. Taking a look at the static body accessory we get from Mecha Frieza, the body is more or less a statue, but even then, they went through the trouble of applying the same detail to it as they did the figure. I honestly think they did an excellent job ripping Frieza from the source material, and I think he's going to really stand out on the shelf when you pose him up next to Trunks. So overall, the paint detail here is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Well, 9.9 out of 10. I just wish the right ear wasn't a flat surface, as in the anime, it shows to be open. Anyways, minor gripe aside, let's move on. Alright, let's get into the articulation here for Mecha Frieza. Right off the bat, there are going to be some major improvements compared to your standard 4th form Frieza, with a few minor setbacks, but we'll talk about them as we go. Starting with the head and working our way down, the first drawback is Frieza's on a ball hinge. To some, this may not be a big pain point, but for me, especially after having some 3.0 figures in hand, this is kind of a nuisance. It is a nice, thick peg, which is obviously very nice, considering, some of the pegs that we get on the 2.0 Gokus are extremely thin and prone to breaking. This will probably last a while. But the downside is we have to fight that hinge every time we rotate the head or put the head back on. So when you do something like that, rotate the head a full 360, you take the chance of rotating that peg and having Frieza tilt one way or the other. So you'll have to fix it to get the most range out of whatever direction you're wanting to get Frieza to go into, like this. Leaning back, or tilting the head back, looks about like that, and looking down is about neutral. Most of your articulation, though, when it comes to looking down or up or side to side, is going to come from the neck joint, which is super solid. Look at this. Frieza can bury that chin no problem, and he can look up about that high. Make sure we're seated properly. Yeah, that's just solid. Very nice. Side to side tilt. For the torso, Frieza is going to be able to crunch forward about this far. Get the hand out of the way just a little bit more. Leaning back is about that far. As you can see, it's no greater than neutral, to be honest with you, and the more you lean Frieza back, the more that this gap becomes exposed, this little cavity on his chest where this rests when it sits flush. This is hinged, as you can see, hopefully. It is hinged inside there. And on your standard 4th form Frieza, it is actually just a little ball peg that pegs in and moves around whenever you move Frieza. Getting a little ahead of myself. The side-to-side movement is slightly there. Rotating is also there, just barely though. But keep in mind, as you do that, you will get that cavity to be exposed. Most of your leaning side to side, rotating, or crunching or leaning back is going to come from the lower waist here on Frieza. As we can see, leaning forward is going to get Frieza to crunch about that far, and leaning back is really good. Keep in mind though, as you do this, you do take the risk of scuffing this up against the body. So keep that in mind, because that is painted. Frieza will rotate probably a full 360. I'm just not going to push it just because I don't want to scuff any paint. For the arms, we're on a ball and socket system that allows Frieza to rotate a full 360. We do have a little bit of a drop down going on here, a little giggity, and we can bring those arms in with those butterfly joints fairly decently. Here's something I find interesting, or at least I like. It is borrowed from the metal cooler that recently released, and that is the shoulder pads being hinged, where they can drop down and allow Frieza to raise those arms up a little bit greater than 180 degrees. It's very nice. And then once you get the arm in the position you want, you can just kind of cover that up again, and it looks seamless. That's something I do like compared to your standard fourth form Frieza, is that you can see where the hinge is, and it just looks a little unclean, especially on the first run of Frieza where he comes packaged with all the goodies, the rocks, the special, or the death beam, all that stuff. Here, this is nice. I like it. It's very clean. I just wish it was more pearlescent than it is a matte color or a glossy finish. We do have a upper thigh swivel that rotates a full 360. We have double jointed elbows and probably a first. I could be wrong, but this is what I've noticed on these figures, or at least this figure in particular. We have a rotating forearm. This is actually swiveled. It is actually really nice. I love that little nice attention to detail. The wrists are ball hinges. And again, much like the head, you will have to rotate this around however you want it to then get the articulation you want. Now, these elbows being double jointed, this one here doesn't have an issue going back down into the neutral position, but here we will get hung up on the elbow right there. I can't, as you can see, I cannot get that to go down any further. What I've had to do is rotate this and then try to bring that down, and it works. For the legs, Frieza has a drop-down mechanism here, much like the traditional fourth form Frieza, but it looks a lot cleaner. It doesn't go all the way up in there because it's segmented. Your thigh swivel is actually going to be down here now, but we can drop this down and kick about that far out, about 90 degrees. Without the drop down, Frieza kicks forward less than 90 degrees. Splits with the drop down about 45 degrees. The upper thigh swivel is very nice. And you've probably noticed just a little bit there, this looks like it's a little bit loose. It's actually the way it's designed to have a little bit of give to it, so that way it's not a struggle to get it on and off. It's just because you'll probably be taking this off quite a bit to transfer over to the other body, or depending on how you want to set Frieza up, you'll probably just take these off and leave it that way. But in case you want to pose the traditional Frieza around, these come off fairly easily and they snap on and make a good firm connection. Whoops. There we go. See? Good firm connection. And we also, in here, have these little loose bits. This is to cover up the joints inside, but they do make a little bit of a noise, as you can hear. So, it is what it is. The knees are double jointed. The ankles go down about that far, up about that high, and they rotate a little bit side to side. To get the most out of the range, though, you will have to move that ball hinge there into the position you want it, much like the wrists and the head of Frieza. So keep that in mind. For the tail, the last point of articulation here on the figure, this actually pegs into the back of Frieza's buttocks and is hinged. So depending on which way you move it is where you're going to get your articulation. And it does look a little god-awful whenever you move it in certain directions. So I do like it though for being segmented, because this helps with getting Frieza to hold a pose a lot better than the fourth form Frieza does, because of it being a static piece. It wants to either topple over or, yeah, topple over, forward, or back. This here, you can move it around, actually act as a support stand for Frieza, whereas the fourth form Frieza, no. At least in my experience, I may be doing it wrong, but 9 times out of 10, I'm using a stand for the other fourth form Frieza. So, overall, Frieza here is going to do exactly what you want him to do. He's going to be fun to articulate. I don't have any real big gripes with him, except for the elbows here, or just this elbow, and the, I mean, honestly, it's not even a real big pain point, but the ball hinge. I mean, we could stand for a double ball peg, and yeah, see? There you have it. Let's move on. For the accessories, Frieza comes with a decent spread. We get 3 extra head sculpts for a total of 4. We also get 4 sets of hands, an extra body to recreate the scene where Frieza gets cut in half, and an effect stand to hold up that extra body. The heads included are the default smirking face, a teeth gritting face, a face where Frieza is smiling ear to ear looking down, perfect for those death balls, and a shouting face. All these faces are sculpted beautifully, but the only downside about them is that we have to physically remove pieces from whatever head sculpt we're currently using and transfer them over to the desired head. These pieces include the 4 blue-like dome objects on the right side of his head and the jock strap on the left. A bit of an inconvenience, but we can make it work. I'd honestly like to know who was in charge of the design choice behind that. Probably the same person who thought it was okay to have the mohawk be removable as Zamasu. Anywho, not including the 2 fists that come attached, we get 2 pointing hands perfect for death beams or death balls, 2 clenched hands, and 2 splayed out hands for energy attacks. Lastly, for the sliced in half Frieza, we must make use of the arms and legs from the Frieza figure itself. Simply pop them off the figure and transfer them over. I will note that the arms and legs come off easily and peg back in no problem. They do make a firm connection, so you don't have to worry about them popping off randomly. Next, you'll need to take your support stand and peg it into the back of Frieza, then attach it to the base, and you're ready to grab your future trunks and display these 2 together. Now for the negatives with these accessories, we don't get any extra feet like we're used to seeing with the other Frieza releases, or his brother for that matter. Plus, we don't get a crossed arms accessory, which is a bit of a bummer. I also think that the sliced Frieza should have had a gimmick of some sort. Maybe where you could separate Frieza just a little bit more to really show that he's fixing to be turned into cold cuts, as Trunks would put it. Speaking of Trunks, this was a missed opportunity to give Trunks another faceplate for his base form head, especially that cocky smirk he gives Frieza right before he turns Super Saiyan. For the comparisons, we have Mecha Frieza next to the reissue of the Super Saiyan Trunks Boy from the Future, the legendary Super Saiyan Son Goku, Metal Cooler, and 4th form Frieza. So for my closing thoughts on Mecha Frieza, I actually enjoyed this one a little bit more than I thought I was going to. And I know I've said that about Android 19 and 20, but here, Frieza just feels really good in hand, and I have no real gripes with him outside of what I mentioned throughout the review. What's more, this is a Vietnamese release, and if y'all have watched my Future Trunks video, you'll know exactly how I feel about seeing Made in Vietnam on the packaging. It doesn't exactly instill me with confidence that I'm getting a solid release, but here, I can safely say Tamashii knocked this one out of the park. I also like the figure for the nostalgia. I can vividly remember the first time 6-year-old me saw Frieza return, and then Future Trunks came out of nowhere and gave Frieza the old slice and dice. Dude literally did a speedrun on the Namek Saga. I also remember playing Budokai 3 with my cousin all summer, and we had the bright idea to pit Mecha Frieza up against Metal Cooler. I'm pretty sure I was Mecha Frieza, and I got my butt handed to me, but that's neither here nor there. Setting the nostalgia glasses aside, is the figure worth the premium Bandai tax? Well, Frieza here went for 85 USD on premium Bandai, and I did buy 2 thinking I'd have one to display next to King Cold, and the other to display like I'm pretty sure everyone else is going to. The figure is lacking a bit in the accessory department, but I can kinda understand that given how brief of an appearance this version of Frieza has in Z. And the updates made to this Frieza makes me think we could be in for a 3.0 4th form Frieza if Tamashii really wanted to give us one. I'm sure he could easily be retooled, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. So if you're listening to this, Tamashii, get on it. No, like, seriously, get on it, please. But back to you, the viewer that's probably on the fence about getting this figure. Right now, on the high end, he's going for about 55 USD over his initial price of 85 on other third-party websites. And I know that can be tough for those of you who wait till the reviews come out to drop money on a niche figure like this. This technically could be seen as an expensive accessory pack for Trunks, but even then, as a standalone figure, I can honestly say you're going to have a great time posing him around, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by him overall. And as I've said with any other P-Band release, if you really have to have this figure, get him now before it goes up in price. And that brings us to the end of the review. If you haven't already, kindly hit the like button and subscribe, as it helps me out and keeps the channel growing. Plus, I've got other reviews on the channel and more to come. I'd also love to know what you think of Mecha Frieza. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Was this a hard pass, or have you had the chance to mess around with the figure yet? As always, I appreciate y'all stopping by. This has been Talite Reviews, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.